The baby in your belly wants to say something.
During lunch with my mother-in-law and sister's family, my niece pointed at my belly.
Grandma, Grandpa in heaven is angry.
With the mysterious power of my 6-year-old niece's words, my mother-in-law turned pale. What she had been hiding was gradually coming to light. My name is Chloe. I'm 28 years old, married. I work as an office clerk at a small trading company. I reunited with my current husband, Henry, who was a classmate, at a reunion last year, and we swiftly progressed from dating to marriage. I always liked his good upbringing and gentle nature from our school days, so I was happy when he approached me at the reunion. His father ran a well-known company locally, and he was known as a rich kid in elementary school.
Long time no see. You look more mature now.
Long time no see. But isn't it natural to grow up? How have you been? Are you running your father's company now? When I casually asked.
No. My dad passed away 7 years ago, and the company was merged. I'm just a regular employee at another company now.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked so insensitively.
No. It's okay. I'm not cut out for running a company anyway. So, what's Chloe up to these days?
His good upbringing seemed unchanged, and it felt comfortable talking to him. It seems he, the serious type, had secretly liked me, the earnest class representative, back then. We made the next promise on the spot. We, who were starting to think about marriage, didn't take long to decide on each other as life partners. However, there were revelations after we got married, which have become my current source of distress.
Henry, Chloe, I'm coming in.
Early on Saturday morning, my mother-in-law came to our new home unannounced again. Oh, mother-in-law, welcome. I'm sorry it's messy. I greeted her with a forced smile.
It's messy. Even if you're both working, you should clean up properly on your days off.
She frowned. I was planning to clean up soon. I made excuses in my mind.
And your outfit. Chloe, you're a newlywed, so could you dress a bit more stylishly? Henry will be embarrassed. Okay? Wearing cheap clothes makes your whole personality look cheap.
She sighed dramatically. She was dressed up in full makeup and Coach items. Due to the sudden unannounced visit, I was in casual clothes without makeup. Those obvious brand name items are out of fashion now and even look tacky. While cursing silently in my mind, I just smiled and let it pass.
Honestly, Henry is kind, so he may not be able to say what he wants from his wife, but sometimes you have to speak up, you know?
She put her hand on his back.
Mom, I appreciate your concern, but Chloe has her job and is busy.
He said quietly.
Oh, look, even the flowers at the entrance are withering. I'll change the water for you. You can't have wilted flowers on display.
She dashed to the entrance as if she hadn't heard. So, she comes early in the morning on our day off and just keeps making snide remarks. She's eating away at my father-in-law's inheritance and splurging on expensive branded goods. So she's in a good position, isn't she? She doesn't know the struggles of working couples at all.
Oh no, that sounds tough. Doesn't Henry say anything?
Well, he tries to, but he's completely defeated. It seems like he never thought he could win against his mom from the start. He's kind of a pushover for her, after all. I was having coffee at my sister's house in the neighboring town, venting my frustrations.
Chloe, are you angry?
While I was complaining to my sister, My 6-year-old niece Grace came over and sat down. No. I'm not angry. Hey, Grace, want to play a card game? Talking like this in front of a child wasn't good. I turned towards my niece, reflecting on that.
Yay! Let's play poker.
She is sensitive, they say, but Grace has an extraordinary side to her. She's usually just a normal 6-year-old, but sometimes she speaks with a mysterious aura. There have been incidents like this before.
Mom, when we go to the shopping mall, we should take this road. It's dangerous from that side because there might be a car accident.
Ha! What are you saying, Grace? Stop joking around. It's scary.
At first, my sister laughed it off, but Grace's expression was serious, and it didn't seem like she was joking, so she got a little uneasy and decided to take a different route to the shopping mall, just in case. Immediately after, we heard sirens from an ambulance and a police car. Peeking from afar, it seemed there had been a collision between cars. My sister later told me that she shuddered at the thought of what might have happened if they hadn't believed her words and taken their usual route. There was also an incident where Grace told her mom's friend,
Tonight, the house next door seems to be on fire.
When my sister mentioned a previous incident where she predicted a traffic accident, her friend decided to stay at her parents' house that night. And indeed, the neighboring house had chores, and part of her friend's house had burned down. With a few incidents like this, Grace began to be praised by those around her as a girl with mysterious powers. They even received interview requests from the media several times, but my sister and her husband reportedly turned them all down. That's because after predicting something, Grace would lose consciousness and then invariably develop a high fever. If information about Grace were spread by the media, many people might try to exploit her power. When that happened, her body might not hold up. Thinking this way, my sister and her husband were extremely cautious not to publicize Grace's power. They even reminded the mom friend who was saved by Grace not to post about it on the internet.
Yay! I won. It's Grace's turn again.
Grace, who was excitedly playing poker, looked like just an ordinary 6-year-old girl. However, I had nursed her back to health after her predictions, and every time I remembered her suffering, my heart tightened. Whether she had special powers or not, I just wanted this child to grow up healthy and happy. I couldn't help but think that. One day, I was blessed with a long-awaited baby. When I told Henry about it, he was overjoyed.
That's fantastic, Chloe. I'm so happy.
He was teary-eyed with joy. He immediately called his mother to share the news. Seemingly asked to speak to me, when I took the phone.
Congratulations, Chloe. I have something I want to give you, so I'll be visiting soon.
She said with a cheerful voice, and I didn't feel bad about it. It seemed she had just said something nasty to me out of concern for her son. I was sure she would also dote on her grandchild. That's what I thought at the time.
Chloe, I bought this for you. It's a charm from a famous shrine for easy childbirth and organic foods said to be good for pregnant women.
When he wasn't there, my smiling mother-in-law visited and spread out what she had brought to the dining table. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for all this. As I began to say those words, she interrupted.
I got all of this through my connections, so it's a great deal. It's only $200, specially discounted. Normally, it's over $500. It's special, so cheap.
She said with a grin. Huh? Money? even though she brought it without asking? I'm sorry. I can't pay for this. I'll return everything you brought. As I tried to push it back, her face turned bright red.
What are you saying, rude daughter-in-law? I brought gifts to celebrate, you know.
With a loud shout, she left, making a loud noise as she went. Huh? Am I in the wrong here? Is it not wrong to bring unsolicited items and try to sell them? Come to think of it, even the organic food products she brought seemed cheap and suspicious. I decided to search for the product names I remembered online. The website was full of fake-sounding phrases like mystical power. Even incurable diseases are cured instantly. I'm glad I didn't buy anything. Why would she try to sell something like this anyway? Feeling thoroughly suspicious, I told my husband about this incident when he came home.
Ah. My mom just likes healthy foods and stuff.
He didn't seem to take it too seriously. But still, it's scary to have things brought over and sold to you without asking. Can't you talk to her about it nicely, Henry?
Got it. I'll talk to her.
But his tone sounded weak, and it didn't seem like he was being very firm. After he hung up the phone, how did it go? With your mom?
Ah. She said she'll come again next Sunday.
Huh? But next Sunday, we have plans to go to lunch with my sister's family, right?
Yeah. I told her that. But she said she'll come with us.
Huh? What's that about? I sighed at my husband, who couldn't assert himself with his mother. And then, the next Sunday.
Henry, Chloe, good morning. I wonder what we'll eat today.
The cheerful mother-in-law was standing in front of the house, completely different from last time. I didn't even say let's go together. I was feeling fed up. I had been looking forward to a fun lunch with my sister's family, but my mood plummeted with the appearance of my mother-in-law. The restaurant she chose had been selected with consideration for my morning sickness, but...
Well, let's go. Mom, Chloe.
He tried to accommodate both of us. My sister's husband couldn't make it due to a business trip. Maybe he thought it would be easier to talk if his mother was there. We had arranged to meet at a restaurant in a certain hotel. My sister waved when she saw us, but she looked puzzled when she saw my mother-in-law.
Hello. Chloe, thanks for always taking care of us.
My mother-in-law casually accepted my sister's greeting and loudly started looking through the menu.
I've always wanted to come to this restaurant. What should I eat? Maybe I'll have the sirloin steak, roast duck, and let them make me a sushi assortment.
She called over a waiter and started ordering on her own. We were all dumbfounded when...
Your husband works for that famous company, right? So, you can just pay for everything here with his card, right?
My mother-in-law grinned crudely. Wait. Did she plan to make us treat her from the start?
I don't have my husband's card with me.
My sister said, visibly annoyed. Mom. We'll pay for this ourselves. Henry hastily intervened. Oh, come on, my anticipated lunch was ruined. I sighed with my eyes closed. At that moment, my niece Grace, who had been silent until then, suddenly stood up.
What's wrong, Grace? Sit down. That's rude.
Ignoring my sister's words, Grace had a distant look in her eyes as if she were looking somewhere far away. That look. I glanced at my sister. It was a drastic change from her usual innocent expression to a strange, godlike gaze. It was the look she had when she predicted something.
The baby in your tummy has something to say.
Grace pointed to my belly. Grace was looking towards my mother-in-law.
Grandma, Grandpa in heaven is angry. You spent all the important money, didn't you? And you're borrowing money from bad uncles, right?
After saying that, she suddenly collapsed as if all the strength had left her body.
Grace. Are you okay?
My sister hurriedly picked Grace up.
I'll let her rest for a bit.
My sister said and rushed off with Grace in her arms. What just happened? I looked at my mother-in-law, who had turned pale and was trembling violently.
Mom? What's wrong with what the kid said?
My husband, who didn't know about Grace's power, seemed confused about what had happened, but he seemed to feel distrust towards his mother due to her change in attitude.
Well, you know, kids these days make strange jokes. I'll just go to the restroom.
Saying that, my mother-in-law hastily got up from her seat. I was worried about Grace, but I couldn't let my mother-in-law slip away here. A warning bell went off in my head. Henry, could you help my sister? Leaving my sister and niece to Henry, I followed after my mother-in-law. Hey, where are you going? The restroom is that way. I called out from behind her, who was pressing the elevator's down button. Could it be? You're not using up your late husband's inheritance and getting into debt, are you? That child, Grace, has a strange power and has predicted various things before. Come to think of it, something was bothering me. Trying to sell me organic food and wanting to pass the restaurant bill to others. For someone who dresses in luxury brands, she's oddly cheap with money. Could it be?
I couldn't stop buying luxury items with my husband's inheritance, and my fortune dwindled. I tried to cover the loss with investments, but ended up losing big and got into debt.
She spoke with her head bowed.
Chloe, you've relied on me all this time, haven't you? I raised Henry well, so your current wealth is thanks to me. So, lend me some money, okay? I'll make a big profit with this investment this time. Invest in me.
How shameless. Even without Grace's precognition, it's clear she will lose big on this investment too. And then she'll come begging for money again. Just then, Henry arrived.
Grace went home with your sister in a taxi. What's wrong, Mom? Chloe?
I explained the situation briefly, and...
Considering everything I've done for you, it's a small price to pay. Besides, if you...
Don't be ridiculous, Mom. I was just a student back then, and I didn't have the confidence to be a CEO. How much debt are we talking about here?
The amount she mentioned was a digit higher than we expected. We exchanged looks. With a baby on the way, we couldn't shoulder this amount of debt.
Mom, sorry, but you made that debt, and we can't take it on. I'll introduce you to an acquaintance who's a lawyer, so you can consult with them.
He said decisively, which was unusual for him.
That's it. Please don't contact us again.
She was still yelling something, but we left without looking back. Then, we moved and changed our address. Of course, we didn't inform my mother-in-law of the new address. We also set up call blocking on our phones. Afterward, according to what we heard from his relatives, it seems she went around begging for money from relatives and acquaintances, but ended up being estranged from them all. She's saying she doesn't want to declare bankruptcy because there are too many restrictions.
Honestly, She can't forget her lavish lifestyle from when she was well off. It's too naive to think someone will pay her debts.
It seems she is now being chased by debt collectors while living a lonely life in poverty. I gained a newfound respect for Henry, who couldn't say anything to his mother but firmly stated his position. He's starting to realize his role as a father, and he seems to have become a reliable man. And thanks to Grace's prediction at that time, I was grateful that my mother-in-law's debt had come to light. If we had continued to associate with her, we might have ended up burdened with debt without even realizing it. And then, 10 months later, I visited my sister's house with my newborn daughter.
Wow. A baby. So cute.
Grace comes running over.
Grace, you've got a cousin now.
Grace enthusiastically plays with the baby.
How have you been, sis? About Grace's precognition.
I asked her in a low voice.
Well, you know, it hasn't happened recently. It stopped completely when she started elementary school. Seems like that issue with Chloe's mother-in-law was the last straw.
My sister's tone as she spoke was a mix of relief and a little disappointment. I see. But that's a good thing. It's a relief for Grace's health too. Even without special powers, Grace is still Grace.
Yeah. Maybe someday when she grows up, we'll tell her about this. Like, there was something like this that happened in the past.
Saying that we smiled at each other. How did you find this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Well then, let's meet in the next video.
When will that useless wife finally get pregnant?
Amidst the gathering of relatives, my husband drunkenly badmouthed me. Seeking refuge, I slipped out of the room, and there, my 6-year-old niece quietly approached me. She had an air of maturity about her and occasionally predicted future events like a fortune teller, a mysterious child. Suddenly, she began reciting what seemed like a phone number.
Auntie, try calling this woman.
With a determined expression, I succumbed to my niece's request and decided to speak to the owner of that number. Little did I know that this would reveal a terrifying truth. My name is Luna Martin. I met my husband, Michael, at a matchmaking party, and after a few months of dating, we got married. Michael was supportive of me continuing to work even after marriage, so I balanced household chores and work, leading busy yet enjoyable days. However, there was one issue that troubled us. For the past year since our marriage, we hadn't been able to conceive a child. Another disappointment. Both Michael and I were only children, so we longed for as many children as possible. The inability to get pregnant became a source of stress. I wish we had an adorable child like Mia. The name I inadvertently uttered belonged to my niece, whom I had cherished since her birth. Mia was unusually mature for her age and occasionally said things akin to prophecies, a mysterious girl. For instance, when we went out together, despite sunny weather forecasted, Mia would bring an umbrella. Huh? We don't need an umbrella today. It's so sunny.
It'll rain after lunch.
Really? You're kidding. It's such a beautiful day. Initially, I dismissed Mia's comment as a joke, given the cloudless blue sky. But around noon, the weather took a turn for the worse, and eventually, heavy rain left me drenched. Mia also predicted other events, like finding a lost neighborhood dog or guessing the ending of a drama we watched together. And Mia, even during my wedding, made statements that seemed to foresee the future. The truth is, Michael is a divorcee, having split from his previous wife due to infidelity. So, at Michael's request, we skipped the wedding ceremony and only took photos, which we sent to my sister's home. When my sister called to express her gratitude, Mia's anxious voice came through the phone.
Auntie, be careful.
Her cryptic words triggered a slight sense of unease, but I reassured myself that it was probably just her imagination. Little did I know that the meaning behind her words would soon become clear after that call. Due to our inability to conceive, my husband and I began arguing frequently. Sorry. It didn't work again.
Ugh. It's been a year since we got married. Get it together. Is there something wrong with your body?
That's a harsh way to put it. I want a child just as much as you do.
Really? Well, let's find out if you can get pregnant properly by getting tested at the hospital.
And so, I reluctantly went for the examination at my husband's insistence. However, no abnormalities were found in my body. When I reported this to my husband, one would expect relief, but his reaction was quite the opposite.
You're saying it's not your body's fault? Ridiculous.
It's the result of a proper examination. For peace of mind, why don't you get tested too?
Don't joke around. Are you implying I'm defective?
For some reason, when the topic of him going to the hospital came up, my husband transformed, vehemently refusing with raised voices. While it's common for men to be reluctant about medical tests, his reaction was far from ordinary. Why such anger? Something seems suspicious. Gradually, my trust in Michael waned, suspecting he might be hiding something. One day, while I was brooding over my worries, I heard the sound of my husband's phone ringing repeatedly while he was in the bath. Despite always keeping it on silent mode at home, he seemed to have forgotten to set it that way this time. Annoyed by the persistent ringing, I peeked at the screen and noticed a multitude of missed calls from the same phone number. Seeing this, I began to suspect that Michael might be having an affair, but even after discreetly checking his phone and bag, I found no evidence to support my suspicions. After some time, my husband seemed to be entrusted with a new project, resulting in late-night returns home. I supported him by handling the household chores he was responsible for, but there were no words of gratitude or apology from him. However, as I also worked full-time, it was challenging to manage household tasks perfectly.
Hey, the laundry is piling up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had overtime yesterday, so I plan to do it today.
Lately, you've been quite lax with housework. We're having store-bought meals for dinner, and you barely vacuum once a week.
I'm doing your share of the chores too. I work too, you know. If you have complaints, how about taking out the trash?
Unlike you, I have crucial work that affects the company's fate, so I'm tired. Besides, isn't housework a woman's job?
Michael spat out those words and settled onto the sofa to watch a comedy show. Complaining about being busy, yet you come home earlier than I do. As Michael relaxed in the living room, I silently continued with the remaining chores. Thus, caught between work at the office and domestic tasks at home, my heart gradually wore thin. Amidst all this, my husband and I attended a family memorial service. After the solemn ceremony, the gathering transitioned to a meal, with women bustling around, serving drinks to the men. Although my husband was meeting my relatives for the first time, his natural charm quickly won them over, and he engaged in friendly banter over drinks. While everyone praised him as of the kind and wonderful husband, my niece alone regarded him with a wary expression, an unforgettable moment. Then, fueled by alcohol, Michael blurted out disparaging remarks about me to our relatives.
My wife claims she's fine after the tests, but something seems fishy. After all, we're still struggling to have a child.
As I carried dishes to Michael's table, I overheard him spreading gossip about me. Though others gently scolded him, Michael's momentum didn't wane.
When will that inadequate wife of mine finally get pregnant?
Unable to bear his words, I rushed out of the venue, tears streaming down my face. Why did he say that, especially in front of our relatives? Just then, my niece Mia came searching for me.
Auntie, are you here?
She peered at my face and gently held my hand, calming my nerves. I hurriedly tried to return to the memorial service venue, but Mia stopped me. Then, in a hushed voice, she began reciting a series of numbers. A phone number, it seemed.
I thought of this number when I saw your husband's face earlier. Call it.
Huh? Whose phone number is this?
Never mind that. Just dial it quickly.
Urged by Mia, I entered the number into my phone. Wait, this looks familiar. It turned out to be the same number that had filled Michael's call history on his phone. Realizing this, I hastily made the call.
Hello?
After a few rings, a melodious voice answered. And from that person, I learned the truth Michael had been hiding, a truth so far-fetched that I initially couldn't believe it.
Auntie, what the woman said is true.
But Mia, who had been listening alongside me, whispered this as I was panicking. Her words helped me regain composure, and simultaneously, my anger toward Michael erupted. Had my precious year been wasted on such a selfish man? As I hung up the phone, I noticed that the memorial service was about to conclude. With Mia by my side, I left the scene. As we hurried back to the venue, our relatives were already tidying up after the meal, preparing to leave.
Hey, where were you? We should head home soon.
Spotting me, Michael reached for my arm. Stop. I instinctively shook off his hand and turned on the speakerphone of my phone. Just as Michael, rejected and visibly angry, was about to ask what I was doing, a woman's voice came through the phone.
So Luna's words were true after all. Nice to meet you all. I'm Michael's real wife, Cindy.
The moment Cindy's voice reached him, Michael's face turned pale, and the surrounding relatives buzzed with unease. Yes, the owner of the phone number Mia had given me was Michael's true wife. Michael had fought with her for some reason and left home. Yet, without officially divorcing, he had somehow carried on a sham marriage with me. I had trusted him to handle the marriage registration, never suspecting he hadn't submitted it. Just as Cindy was about to say something, Michael snatched my phone, cutting the call and powering it off. Hey. What are you doing?
And what's your game? Who was that woman earlier?
What? Weren't you listening? She's your wife. The real one.
Come on, what grudge do you have against me? Cut the charade.
Our exchange unfolded while the watching relatives held their breath, sensing the tension. After a tense exchange, the person we had been waiting for finally appeared.
Michael, we finally meet. I've been searching for you.
The truth was that Cindy, Michael's real wife whom I had spoken to on the phone earlier, had arrived. Carrying shopping bags, she confidently entered the room, wearing a smile that bordered on intimidation.
Why are you here?
Luna told me about this place. Coincidentally, I was shopping nearby, so I came straight here.
With a grin, Cindy pulled an envelope from her bag and handed it to Michael.
It's a good thing I always carry it.
As he hesitantly opened the envelope, it revealed divorce papers and some other documents. When I tried to look at the papers, Michael stopped me. What's that?
It's just the results of a health check.
Well, then why not show it? Persistently pressing him, Cindy dropped a bombshell.
You won't show it, will you? Because it states that the cause of infertility is you.
Her words caused even more commotion among the relatives. After all, Michael had been blaming me for our inability to have children. Under their cold stares, Michael remained speechless. Afterward, Cindy began sharing the real reason Michael had left home. As it turns out, Cindy faced a similar situation to mine. Despite no issues on her end, she struggled to conceive, and Michael would make hurtful remarks. Fueled by anger, Cindy secretly purchased a testing kit and discovered that Michael was the one with fertility challenges. She intended to support him through infertility treatments, but Michael's reaction was explosive.
Why did you test me without my consent? And men can't be infertile. You've wounded my pride. I'll get out of this house.
True to his word, he left without listening to Cindy's side of the story. While most of the situation became clear, I still wondered why Michael hadn't divorced Cindy and instead entered into a sham marriage with me. The reason, it turned out, was surprisingly childish.
It frustrated me that I was told I was infertile, so I wanted to shock Cindy.
Apparently, Michael attended a matchmaking party to prove a point to Cindy. He believed that if he met a young woman like me, she would get pregnant.
My plan was to have a child with Luna and then flaunt it to Cindy before serving her divorce papers.
When Michael uttered those words, both the relatives and I were genuinely appalled.
You're truly despicable, trampling on Luna's feelings. Enough already. Sign the divorce papers.
Your unexpected appearance ruined my plan. Fine, we'll get divorced, but you'll be stuck with me forever.
Afterward, Michael angrily filled out the divorce papers and roughly handed them to Cindy. Cindy, glancing at the crumpled document, patted my shoulder and said, "Good luck," before leaving. After Cindy left, Michael's previous bad mood vanished, and he reached for my hand with a creepy smile.
Now that no one is in our way, we can truly become a family. Let's submit our marriage registration tomorrow. Come on, let's go home.
His overly optimistic words gave me goosebumps, and I once again shook off his hand. If you're going home, do it alone.
Why are you being so cold? We loved each other, didn't we?
You used me for revenge against your wife. There's no love left for someone like you. Brace yourself. I intend to sue you for marriage fraud.
Wait.
My icy words left Michael shocked and speechless. Leaving him there, I exited the venue. Shortly thereafter, Michael and Cindy finalized their divorce. I also filed a lawsuit against Michael for marriage fraud. In the end, Michael had to pay Cindy $20,000 and me $10,000 in compensation. Currently, Michael works tirelessly under his parents' supervision, while Cindy, now a successful career woman, enjoys a fulfilling life post-divorce. As for me, following my niece's assurance that the next person would be fine, I met a kind man and got married. I eagerly await the day when our new family will grow.
How did you find this story? If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing to our channel. Until next time.
Are you alive? I found my niece, who was supposed to have died in a car accident at the age of 5, at my in-laws' house. In her memorial photo, she had a cute, round face, but now she was so skinny that I couldn't believe it was her until I heard her voice.
Help me. I want to see Mom.
The hand reaching out to me for help was too weak to grasp anything. From that moment on, I began to uncover the dark secrets of my in-laws' family. When I was 25, I married Jackson, who was 3 years older than me and whom I met at work. I grew up in the same area where I worked, but Jackson was born and raised in a much more rural area. When we went to greet his parents for the marriage announcement, we drove for hours, arriving at a place surrounded by endless fields. There stood the largest mansion in the area, Jackson's family home, belonging to the most powerful family there.
Well, it's a bit formal here, but Chloe, you don't need to be so nervous.
Jackson smiled at me, but it was impossible not to be nervous. The house was enormous, grand, and imposing like a small castle, with a well-maintained large garden. At that moment, I was overwhelmed, realizing I was marrying into an incredible family. However, a kind-looking woman and a child greeted me at the entrance.
Hello.
The cheerful greeting came from Michelle, Jackson's niece, and next to her, quietly smiling, was his sister-in-law, Emilia. Nice to meet you. Emilia kindly reassured me. It's okay, as I stammered. I learned that she took care of the house and the garden all by herself.
We planted those tulips together.
In the flower bed she pointed to, many tulips were blooming, with only one being red.
Mom loves flowers.
Thanks to Michelle and Emilia, I began to relax.
How long are you going to chat at the entrance?
A man's angry voice came from inside the house.
Dad's calling. We should go in.
Jackson hurriedly took off his shoes and went inside, so I quickly followed. In the living room, waiting for us, were his father, James, and his brother, Grant. They looked me up and down and muttered, "So this is it." What? What does that mean? I was stunned and confused.
This is my fiancée, Chloe.
At Jackson's words, I quickly bowed my head. Nice to meet you. I'm Chloe.
Hey, hurry up and bring the tea.
But it seemed like they didn't hear my greeting. Grant ordered Emilia, and she hurriedly came with a tray.
You're so slow.
Grant clicked his tongue in annoyance, and Emilia apologized. I'm sorry. I felt an uneasy feeling watching this scene.
Chloe, you must be tired. Have a seat on the sofa.
As Jackson suggested, I was about to sit down.
You should act more like a woman. Get to the kitchen and start working.
I was stunned by his words and couldn't move, but Jackson intervened.
She came from far away and is tired today. Give her a break. Chloe doesn't have to do anything.
But I couldn't not help out when I was about to become part of the family. I'll go help Emilia. Though tired, I thought it better than staying with my father-in-law and brother-in-law, so I hurried to the kitchen.
Oh, you're going to help too? Yay!
There, Emilia was not alone. Young Michelle was also helping prepare dinner. Michelle, do you always help your mom? That's great.
They say it's only natural because I'm a girl.
Though helping is good, it felt forced somehow. I see.
And we also eat here with just Mom.
It didn't seem like Emilia and Michelle were treated well in this house. Emilia, is this really okay with you? Emilia lowered her shoulders. I'm remarried, and as long as I can be with Michelle, it's fine. She looked down sadly. She explained that her previous husband cheated, leading to their divorce, and soon after, Grant, an acquaintance, contacted her, leading to their marriage. Living as a single mother in the countryside was tough, and she remarried, but her expression was not happy. It seems really tough. Are you okay? I felt concerned but couldn't do anything. The next day after spending the night, Jackson and I left his parents' house.
Chloe, come again.
Michelle, who I had gotten close to, waved enthusiastically at our car. Next to her, Amelia also smiled as she saw us off. I had no idea that this farewell would be the last. A few months later, in the summer, we were having dinner when Grant called. Jackson's face turned very dark after hanging up. What's wrong?
Amelia and Michelle died in a car accident.
No way. Remembering our last encounter, I fought back tears. Then we should hurry to help with the funeral.
But
Jackson hesitated and looked away.
they died a week ago, and the funeral is already over.
What? Since Amelia was a second wife and Michelle wasn't Grant's biological child, they only had a cremation without inviting anyone. That's just too cruel.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Jackson, looking down, was also crying. He had noticed the way his father and brother treated Amelia and Michelle and had tried to warn them.
Stay out of it. You are the second son.
His father had sternly told him. He had shared with me earlier. We spent that night unable to sleep, tormented by the regret of not being able to do anything for Amelia and Michelle. Half a year later, we were directly invited by my in-laws to come back for New Year's greetings to the neighbors.
We postponed the wedding because of everything that happened. Now my family insists on gathering everyone for New Year's and introducing you.
His father and brother had forcibly insisted, and Jackson couldn't refuse.
I'm sorry, Chloe. But can you come with me?
Seeing Jackson bow his head apologetically, I nodded despite my own reservations. But isn't it inappropriate to celebrate when Amelia and Michelle just passed away? Jackson nodded deeply, sharing my sentiment. Although it felt somewhat improper, we couldn't say no if the family insisted. I convinced myself they were trying to fill the void and decided to accompany Jackson to his family's home. When we arrived, the house was bustling with many people like a festival. Relatives and locals had gathered. Grant noticed us and approached.
Thanks for coming today. This year is special because you joined our family, and we wanted to introduce you on this joyous occasion.
I appreciate the sentiment, but with what happened to Amelia, it feels a bit uncomfortable. I glanced at the garden where Amelia's favorite flower bed was. 6 months ago, it was filled with vibrant flowers, but now it was overrun with weeds. I thought Grant might still be mourning, but surprisingly, he showed no sign of sadness and smiled.
Actually, Amelia and I weren't getting along. I was planning to divorce her, so I don't feel that sad.
His nonchalant tone made me question my ears. Despite the lack of love, his indifference to losing his wife and child sent chills down my spine.
By the way, Chloe, do you have kids yet? We weren't successful, so we're counting on you.
Grant lightly patted my back and then moved on to greet other guests. Not successful? Those words stuck with me. I shook my head to forget them. As I was feeling a chill, my father-in-law approached with a stern look. Ah, James. Thank you for inviting us.
You still have that boyish haircut. I've told you women should grow their hair to their waist.
Interrupting my greeting, My father-in-law glared at me. My hair only reached my shoulders. His deep-seated belief in traditional gender roles reminded me of the first time I met him, during our wedding greeting. On top of that, he took the glass I was holding to drink from.
You need to act more like a woman. Cooking, cleaning, and preparing drinks are a wife's duties.
Just like before, I was ordered around like a servant and ended up in the kitchen without any semblance of a warm welcome. Jackson noticed and came to check on me, but my father-in-law called him back to the drinking party. When I went to the kitchen, a few female relatives who seemed to be helping out saw me, and one of them said, "So, the main house's wife has finally arrived." She left without greeting me. So, this is how my New Year's holiday will end. Feeling disheartened by the mountain of dishes, I silently continued my work. The invitation to celebrate was just an excuse. They needed a housekeeper. Emilia, you went through this every year too. I had somewhat braced myself for this, but doing it alone felt much more discouraging. I remembered Michelle's smile and Emilia's gentle face, which only made me feel lonelier. A few hours passed, and before I knew it, it was past midnight. The new year had arrived. My father-in-law and the relatives got up and headed towards the entrance.
We're going to the church now. Everyone, get ready.
I rushed out of the kitchen to prepare, only to be met with a fierce glare from my father-in-law.
The wife stays behind to clean the house and prepare more drinks. We'll drink again when we return, so stay and work. Father, that's not fair to Chloe. I'll stay and help her.
Jackson intervened, but my father-in-law clicked his tongue.
What kind of woman would make a man do housework? This is proof Jackson isn't properly disciplined.
Jackson shrunk back at his father's words. I'm fine. Please, go ahead. I gave up and answered, and Jackson looked at me apologetically.
We'll be back in an hour. Just do what you're told and nothing more.
I didn't understand what he meant by nothing more. What? I asked, and he pointed to a room I had never been in.
Do not enter that room. You're still an outsider to me.
With that, they left for the nearby church. In the now silent house, I let out a big sigh and began preparing for the second round of drinking. The long trip here and the constant chores left me exhausted, but I couldn't rest yet. Rubbing my sleepy eyes, I continued washing dishes. Suddenly, a plate slipped from my hand and shattered loudly in the quiet room. Oh no! If they found out, who knows what my father-in-law would say. I frantically searched for a vacuum cleaner but couldn't find it anywhere. I opened doors and storage rooms in a hurry, and found myself in front of the forbidden room. I'm just looking for the vacuum. It'll be worse if I don't clean up. I steeled myself and opened the door. Immediately, I found the vacuum cleaner and reached for it. Good, now I can clean up without them knowing. I breathed a sigh of relief and looked around. The room was empty. Why can't I enter this room? As I wondered, I heard a strange noise. What? What's that? Was it a ghost? I froze, listening closely. The sound was like something heavy being dragged. In the silent room, it was oddly loud. The sound seemed to come from the ceiling. Maybe an animal got into the attic? Better than a ghost, I thought, but now I was curious about the attic. There are no ghosts. Despite my fear, curiosity drove me forward. I found stairs leading to the attic and cautiously climbed up. What I saw exceeded my worst fears. A child. And chained. In the cobweb-filled darkness, a small girl was curled up. Her hands were bound, preventing escape. I couldn't tell if she was real or a ghost, and I panicked.
I'm hungry.
I recognized that voice. My heart raced, and I rushed over, lifting her long bangs to reveal her face. Michelle? You're alive? It was Michelle, who was supposed to have died in the accident with Amelia 6 months ago. She looked at me blankly, emaciated but unmistakably Michelle.
Aunt Chloe? Help me. I want to see Mommy.
The chain was hooked high, out of her reach. I unhooked it and carried her to the kitchen. I made some soup and slowly fed her. Color returned to her cheeks. Why were you in there? She couldn't have wandered in by accident.
Where's Mommy? I want to see Mommy.
She suddenly started crying. It was odd.
No matter how much I cried, she never came. Is Mommy okay?
It was as if she didn't know about the accident. Michelle, do you not know?
Know what?
I couldn't tell her the truth. I changed the subject. Were you always in the dark?
Yes. Uncle and Grandpa locked me up. I was scared.
Her uncle was Grant, her stepfather. He never earned her trust enough to be called Daddy. Why would they do such a thing? I didn't understand Grant and my father-in-law's motives, but it wasn't safe to stay. I wrapped Michelle in a blanket and hid her in the back seat of my car.
Aunt Chloe, are Mommy's flowers blooming?
On the way, Michelle, sleepy after eating, murmured.
In Mommy's garden, there was one red tulip. She said something important is there.
What? I was about to start the car but stopped at her words.
Mommy said to give it to you and Uncle Jackson if anything scary happened.
The garden was dark, and the flowers were dead. I had no idea where the tulip had been. Was the tulip over there? As I pondered, my father-in-law and the others returned from the church.
Why are you outside? Is the food ready?
We ran out of drinks, so I was about to go buy some. I quickly made an excuse and grabbed Jackson's hand, pulling him into the car. Please help me find a store.
Okay. You drive.
Jackson seemed to sense something and quietly got in. My brother-in-law tried to stop us, but I managed to drive off.
What on earth is going on?
Jackson seemed to think that I had stormed out because I couldn't handle the household chores anymore. So, I told him everything about Michelle.
I can't believe this has been happening.
As expected, he didn't know anything about it. Surprised, his drunkenness quickly faded as he turned around and pulled back the blanket in the back seat. Michelle was sleeping soundly, seemingly reassured.
So, Michelle doesn't know her mother passed away, which means the story about them being in a car accident together was a lie.
That's probably what it means. Even piecing together the limited information we had, we couldn't understand why things had turned out this way. So, I made a decision. I'm going to take Michelle to a safe place, and then I'm going back to your family's house to find what Amelia was hiding.
It's too dangerous for you to go back. I'll go instead.
No, Jackson. You probably wouldn't know the exact location. It might indeed be dangerous, but I had to find out what Amelia wanted to convey to us. Jackson, please hide Michelle and then contact the police. My husband seemed to be considering something.
There's someone I want to inform before the police. It's better this way.
He appeared to be talking to himself. He took out his phone and started looking for the number of that person. I drove the car for over an hour to reach the city and found a business hotel. I intended to put Michelle to bed and immediately return to the family house, but I ended up lying down beside her and fell asleep. When I woke up, it was morning.
Good morning. Did you sleep well? So, are you still going to my parents' house?
Jackson's gentle expression almost made me reconsider, but I nodded firmly. I have to clear Amelia's regrets.
But wouldn't it be better if I went with you?
If you come, then Michelle will be in danger. I understood his feelings, but I couldn't yield on this matter. I gently stroked Michelle's head, still asleep, took the car keys, and stood up. Near the family house, I hid the car in the shadow of the woods to avoid detection and walked the rest of the way. It was still early in the morning, so I managed to reach the house without encountering anyone. I started digging up the withered flower bed with my bare hands, keeping my breathing low. However, my hands were numb and my fingertips hurt. Although I remembered the location of the flower bed where the tulip bloomed, I couldn't pinpoint the exact position of the red flower, making it hard to find. Blood eventually began to seep from my hands, but I endured, gritting my teeth. What could be in this flower bed? I wondered what Amelia had told us to look for in case something happened. Amelia. It was really an accident, right? The thought that she might have anticipated something terrible left me with a very bad feeling.
It was an accident. There's no doubt about it.
I jumped at the sudden voice of my brother-in-law. When I turned around, Grant was looking at me with a smile colder than the winter sky.
I was surprised yesterday. Where did you go to buy drinks?
I'm sorry. I ran out of gas on the way back and couldn't return. Grant laughed through his nose at my attempt to come up with an excuse.
Really, wasn't it because you had a lot of luggage? Like, say, one child.
I realized he knew I had taken Michelle. Before I could think of what to say, Grant approached slowly.
That child isn't my blood. So, I hid her to make it as if she never existed.
What are you talking about?
So, a child who has no right to inherit this house is just a nuisance.
His sinister smile sent chills down my spine. To do such a terrible thing to Michelle for that reason. If anyone finds out, you won't get away with it.
Exactly. That's why no one knows. And anyone who finds out can be hidden away.
Grant reached out to grab me, but I was so terrified that I fell back onto the flower bed, unable to stand. Stay away. I grabbed a handful of dirt and threw it at him, causing him to flinch slightly. As I reached for more dirt, I found something buried. It was a diary in a plastic bag with Amelia's name on the cover. This is it. Grant also noticed and longed to snatch it, but I hugged it to my chest, trying my best to keep it from him. However, I couldn't match his strength, and he hit me repeatedly until I nearly lost consciousness. At that moment, a sharp voice shouted, "Stop!" I turned to see a sturdy man glaring at Grant, with Jackson beside him, catching his breath. "Why are you here?" The man grabbed Grant by the collar and demanded, Give me back my daughter, Michelle. It was Michelle's biological father. Jackson had told me last night that he was a distant friend, and after Amelia's death, he had learned about Michelle and had been in contact with Jackson. Michelle's father explained that they had been tricked into divorcing. Both believed the other was unfaithful due to fake evidence, which was orchestrated by Grant. By the time he realized the truth, he had been told Amelia and Michelle had died. The man pulled Grant away from me and growled,
Is it true you mistreated my child? Who knows? You have no proof.
Grant remained unfazed. He must have already cleaned up the attic after noticing Michelle's absence. We have Michelle's testimony.
A child's words are unreliable. How do you plan to catch me?
Grant smirked arrogantly, but Michelle's father silently pulled out something from his chest pocket.
What? You're a cop.
Seeing the police badge, Grant flinched but quickly retorted.
I have connections with the top brass here. I'll get you fired.
However, Michelle's father remained calm.
I'm higher up than that. I usually keep it hidden for investigation purposes.
Grant turned pale at his words. Eventually, Grant was handcuffed and glared at me.
This is all your fault. You meddled too much.
You should reflect on your actions. And you deliberately caused Amelia's accident, didn't you? I had read Amelia's diary while Grant was being apprehended. It said that Grant had told her, I want your insurance money, so go to the other world, prompting her to write it down in a panic and hide the diary. It seemed Amelia had tried to save Michelle while she was trapped, but it hadn't worked out. I'm sure there are more clues in this diary.
No. Please, I don't want to be caught. Help me.
Grant suddenly started begging on his knees. Hearing the commotion, my father-in-law came out, yelling, What's all this noise? Despite his usual overbearing attitude, my brother-in-law pointed at him.
I was just following Dad's example. He got rid of Mom the same way.
My father-in-law turned red with anger at the sudden confession and shouted, Don't say unnecessary things.
I did everything according to Dad's instructions with Amelia and Michelle. It's all Dad's fault.
The scene was chaotic, with my brother-in-law acting like a child and my father-in-law yelling at him. Michelle's father firmly said, You need to come to the police station too, and pushed them into the car without letting them protest. I can't believe this is happening. As the car drove away with the two inside, I sat there in a daze, unable to process the sudden turn of events. Jackson patted my head and said, You did well. Later, I received news that Grant had been formally arrested. He would be judged by the law for his actions against Michelle and Amelia. It was also revealed that my mother-in-law, believed to have died of illness, had also been a victim of my father-in-law's schemes. Neither of them would ever leave prison. I hoped they would regret their actions in their dark cells. Michelle was taken in by her biological father and now lived with her grandparents. The last time I saw her, she smiled at me just like the first time we met.
Aunt Chloe, I was so happy when you saved me. Thank you.
Her tears as we parted were warm as I wiped them away. I wanted her to be happier than anyone else after enduring such a cruel tradition. Jackson and I waved until the car carrying Michelle and her father was out of sight. How did you like this story? Please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.